Hey, what's going on, everybody? George here at the Going Bracket Racing YouTube channel. Man, do I got a treat for you guys today. We're going to do a little bit of informational, a little how-to. As always, I have my right-hand man, my brother from another mother, Mr. Casey Beckmeyer, with me. And we've got some things going on that we think you guys are going to be interested in hearing. I know you see an unfamiliar face there, Mr. Jerry Bonifield, who is going to drop some information for us to share with you guys. And real quick, we'll just give Jerry give a little background about yourself, introduce yourself to the Going Bracket Racing YouTube fans.
All right, hey guys, I've known Casey and George for probably forever, but my name's Jerry Bonifield. You'll see behind me I'm a machine shop instructor, so no better time to plug my stuff than right now. But I've been a junior drag racer. That's how I got to know these guys. From junior drag racing, moved up, raced Super Pro with my dad. Same thing with these guys from Midwest at Gateway International, or I guess I should say Worldwide Technology Raceway now. But it's generally where every Saturday night in the summer you can find me. So I know a little bit about EFI, enough to be dangerous, and hopefully enough to pass on some decent information to you guys tonight.
Absolutely. So yeah, Jerry, I'll tell you what, he has one of the nicest Corvettes I think I've seen out there in the world of drag racing there. And I'll be honest, as a younger guy, before I got into racing myself, helping my dad out, I could remember him and my dad going back and forth, Jerry and my dad going back and forth, and I used to hate pulling up next to that Corvette, and my dad used to get his butt kicked quite a bit by Jerry there. And,
I don't know.
If he listens to this, hey, you guys might have gotten even, but every time I was there, that Corvette, that thing put us on the trailer more than often. So.
I've never beat him in Super Pro ever.
Hey, well, I never raced him, so I'm 0-0, which that's good for me.
I think most of those situations were a lot of luck involved. I think, Casey, most of our interaction from junior dragsters could have been carburetors coming disconnected, me getting really lucky and staying in a little more than I normally would have and just getting it. But there's a tiny bit of skill, but probably 95% of luck.
Hey, man, speaking of that Corvette, isn't that a modified Eliminator car?
Yeah, it was. So that car's had a kind of an interesting history. It's a 67. It's been a race car since about 1970.
Wow.
So it's has very few street miles on it, but yeah, it's had a lot of passes down the track. A lot of them much more successfully than I've been able to do, but it's been around a lot of drag strips for a long time.
Yeah, I mean. That's definitely. I mean, it's definitely a pretty car, and especially with it coming out of modified Eliminator, it's probably pretty fitting for that car to be getting new technology as far as EFI and some of the other things we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, I think that's a good assessment. Casey and I were talking about that last night a little bit. That modified Eliminator has been kind of a cutting edge thing, and I'd like to think we're kind of on that. We're taking older technology and applying new stuff to it. So I'd like to think the trend will continue with that, and hopefully successfully.
Definitely. As always, we want to give a big shout out to Graphics by TMK. Thanks for what you do for us, and thanks for helping us out over here at Going Bracket Racing YouTube channel. And certainly, if you have anything you might want as far as for decals, fender stickers, whatever you need. That Casey's holding up a little example of the Going Bracket Racing decal there. So definitely, if you guys have anything that you might need there, either contact us or get in contact with Graphic by TMK. Without further ado, though, I'm going to turn it over to Casey and allow you guys to get a little bit of information from Jerry.
Yeah, I probably haven't called him his given name for several years. It's going to be tough. So just so everybody knows, Jerry is JR if I slip up, but we're going to try to stick to Jerry. So man, let's try to tell the people about EFI, and I guess the easiest way to start everything would be like kind of telling everybody what EFI did you choose and what data logging system do you use as well?
So a lot of this conversation is going to come from, oh, what's the best way? It's going to sound like it's a commercial for Holley. So there you go, George. George is on the tech. But so we went with the Holley Dominator system. You know, the main reason for that is that it is our standalone EFI system, as well as a data logger. So it's all integrated into one thing. So it's seamless. You know, in addition to that, we have our dash is tied into it through the Holley system. It's a Holley dash. So, you know, like I said, it might kind of sound like a Holley commercial, and you know, to me, that's okay. They've taken care of us on a number of occasions, but you know, that's not to say that's the only system. Some people can be familiar with like the Fuel Tech or the Motec, Haltech, stuff like that. But you know, we went with the Holley because it was the most kind of complete system that filled our needs for data and engine management.
Now, you effectively with that system, you still have fuel rails, and you effectively have, is it similar to a Dominator, like a 4500, or is it more of a 4150 base on there?
So the Dominator in that lineup is kind of confusing on that end. So we are a multi-port fuel injection system. It's very similar to like a daily driver, like an LS platform, like pickup truck or car, to where there's an injector right above each intake port. And we have a normal throttle body. Our throttle body looks like a 4150 base carburetor, except it doesn't have the fuel. The only thing it has is a throttle position sensor, manifold pressure, things of that nature, temperature. It just looks like it, so we can have a normal carburetor filter on it, kind of the traditional setup where we have a normal kind of single plane intake on it with the ports in every cylinder, and it just kind of looks like a carburetor. But yeah, so it deviates from the Dominator lineups a little bit there.
Okay. So can you effectively still use like a normal, what's the generic small block, like a Super Victor or something, and just drill it for the rails?
You know, you definitely can. You know, that's a question I didn't anticipate, but you absolutely can. So the only difference between what we're using and what's out there already is that our casting was machined for it already, and it was cast for the injectors. But if you want to drill the bungs in it and drill the standoffs for the rails, you could take an existing intake and modify it for it and do the exact same thing that we're doing. So, you know, our intake is not, you know, the only option out there. You can make any of it work. So that's a great question.
Yeah, and you'll notice that it is always, when you're talking to me, either good to be George, who just expects me to just kind of go off on a tangent, or also Jerry, who has known me since, well, you're a couple years younger than me, but I've known him since I was about 10 years old, and he's used to me. Plus, being an instructor helps whenever you're talking to me, because I may be one of those guys that's known to kind of, you're on a straight line and then it kind of takes a dog leg every once in a while, but it always comes back.
Yeah, the path less traveled, or the long way around is just fine.
Exactly. We'll always end up where we want to go.
That's right.
So I know you've been talking to this for a while, because obviously we're buddies and, you know, we talk a lot and everything, but I mean, like I said, I know you've talked about EFI and how you liked EFI for years and years and years and years, like back in college and all this stuff. What made you finally decide to go to EFI whenever your car was already really good with your normal carburetor setup? Why not just stay with what you knew already worked? I mean, you were already dead on every time. Why'd you switch?
So the car ran pretty good. It did run the number. One of the motivators to switch, though, and I got to tell you, I'm a data guy, so that'll come into play a little bit later. But I got out of school and went from the broke college kid. So now I have the ability to do a little bit more of what I want and do kind of this stuff back here. So I had the income to finally be able to do it. If I would have had the opportunity to shift earlier, I definitely would have. But you know, our main reasoning for switching is that I like data. part of why I like this industry behind me, and that the more stuff that I can fill out, if it's after the run and if it's figuring out what the temperature, pressure, humidity is, doing my splits between runs, that's all stuff that I can filter and turn into more usable information. Well, EFI and the data logger, we're kind of jumping ahead in the conversation a bit, but those two tied together provide so much more information. Now I can see not only what the weather is doing externally, but I can monitor what the car is doing, internally to see if it's running a little bit rich, what the timing's doing, if something needs to be altered. Really, that's the primary motivator to change, is that I have so much more available, so many more numbers to data log. We in St. Louis, we're all very fortunate. We came from the school of Brett Kepner and the school of drag racing and the value of data, and this just allows me to take more of it. And I can kind of nerd out and spend hours and hours at home looking at all my runs and seeing what I can do to hopefully learn something to correct the driver error, and which is a lot.
I have a lot
and
too.
See what the car is doing or not doing, and kind of assess that for the next runs.
Right, and that was kind of part of our conversation last night, or maybe it was a couple nights ago, whenever we were talking about that. Just going off of what you just said, that I don't think that we fully realized how good we had it to have somebody like Brett Kepner around, not just around, like we were kids, but Brett taught us so much stuff, and Brett could say like one or two things, but he can convey the knowledge in such a way that it can get through to a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old.
Absolutely.
I think, remember that article he wrote about us, the killer bees, I think it wasn't that it?
That wasn't a Kepner one. That was a radical article, but
oh yeah,
he was a cool guy too. But the wealth of knowledge that we had access to was something I think we're all very fortunate to have had, for sure.
Definitely. Yeah, man. So another thing that I was wondering though, back on the subject of EFI, is why would you choose EFI? Because we already talked about how your car was already really good to begin with the carburetor. So if you wanted to go injection, why wouldn't you go mechanical fuel injection, like something like a Terminator setup or something like that? Because again, that's another proven technology. I mean, whenever I was getting ready to, when I thought I was going to be able to afford to build a blower motor for that dragster, I was going to go with I think a dual Terminator setup or something like that on a blower. What made you decide to go to EFI rather than, I guess, MFI?
That would be an option to do. The main reason we went with EFI. So kind of the difference between the two. So the mechanical fuel injection, we know it. It's in the name. So it's done mechanically. You set your flow rates. Air flows through. You get fuel, and that's pretty well what you have. If you want to make any changes, specific RPM, you're fairly limited. Now with the electronic side, if I want to richen the car up at 5,300 RPM, and for some reason I want to lean it out at 6,250, I can do that. So the whole thing about EFI is that we have control, and that control allows us to monitor everything that the engine's doing, and ultimately allows us to also create a very safe setup. I'm not worried about like a carburetor might have kind of a lean spot somewhere throughout the run that you really can't tune out. In the electronic side, I can look at my data log, and if there's a spot in the run where it's going a little bit lean somewhere in that RPM range, we can correct that immediately. So it's really about complete control of the fueling and of the timing in the engine to make sure it's as safe and really efficient as possible. So with mechanical, we didn't really have that option, that flexibility. So EFI that opens up windows to be so tunable and safe for us, to where we can look at exhaust temperature at every hole, We can look at the fuel injector, the pulse width, how much fuel is flowing through every hole, the timing on every cylinder, to where if we start to notice there's a problem, we can generally correct it pretty quickly.
Right. And that is a very interesting thing, because I'm sure you've, more than anybody, probably know who Richard Holdner is. You've heard of him, right?
So that's an absolute no. I have no idea who.
Really? Really? That's surprising. Well, you would love him. So he does a lot of work with Motor Trend, and he does a lot of stuff with like just dyno testing and things like that. And he was explaining the exact thing that you were talking about, where a carburetor will always have, I can't remember. I'm sure it's a lean spot. I don't know how you would have a fat spot, but it's a lean spot all the time in a carburetor that you can't tune out. And
you're jogging my memory, I believe.
Yeah.
I think I saw the same thing, and
you might
I'm parroting, I believe, probably exactly what he was saying.
Yeah, you might just not have realized who you were watching at the time, but he has a very interesting YouTube channel. That's what he does, is he basically just tests theories on the dyno for the most part, as far as what I've seen. I'm sure he does more, but anyway, what did you find the most complicated issue about switching to EFI from something so basic as a carburetor that effectively just meters fuel, and you can take from, what size is your motor? Is it a 383 or 406?
That's 383.
So
mild cam. I couldn't tell you what's in it, but it's
right.
Really mild little guy. But the transition to it required a complete rewire of the car. So to switch, we're adding new ignition system. We're adding new fuel system. Now we have a supply line, we have a return line that comes in, a different filter setup, a different fuel system. We're not using something that's 9 psi, going to the bowls. Now we're at 50 psi, so we have to change that on the feed side. We need a little bit higher pressure, a little bit higher volume to make that work. So probably the most complicated part of it is the wiring. And I say complicated, probably more accurate way to say it would be time consuming. You just need to pay attention, label it, paying attention to the details, and correct routing, staying away from things that are going to create some RF interference, whatnot. The details, the devil in the details is really the thing that makes EFI conversions, from what I've experienced and the little bit that I've seen, good or bad. So if you go slow, take your time, pay attention to what you're doing, it's not too bad. It's certainly something that was a learning experience for us, and we're definitely still learning as we're going. But spending time with good wiring techniques, the right tools, if you do that, you'll be well on your way to have a successful car.
Right.
So that's the hardest part, really, to me, by far, was the wiring. As time is really the more accurate thing to say with it.
Well, and that kind of goes back to the whole deal of, like George was saying earlier, one of the nicest Corvettes you've ever seen. You know what the major issue with a lot of cars is the wiring. It always looks like a rat's nest. And
wait, didn't you have some relatable experiences with wiring a car recently?
I did. If you look back in the Golden Bracket Racing YouTube channel, I guess we could call them at this point. We're getting a couple in here. We can call them the archives. Some of the original stuff that started the entire channel was because of wiring issues. And wiring issues are the death of you as a racer. If you don't fix your wiring issues, nothing works. Go back and look at my problems. Whenever I talked to Jerry and he said, just rewire the whole thing. He may have said a couple other things in there, but we'll leave that part out.
Maybe.
Yeah. We'll leave those other parts out. But I tried to wire one thing, and I'm like, no, I found it. And he's like, don't do that. Don't do that.
Hey, I learned from that experience. I learned from that. That's the first thing that I'm doing to the S10 is stripping out what is I don't know wiring and going right to a K&R wiring kit, a heavy duty one at that. So definitely can attest. I am not going to hold the trans brake button and then the car dies. So
Yep.
we're not going through that on my end over here.
Sometimes I didn't even get that far. Sometimes I didn't get to hold the trans brake button. It just died because it vibrated a bunch of stuff loose whenever it did burnout.
Yeah. Nope,
Yeah.
not hunting those issues down.
Arcing wire.
Man, it was, but yeah, Jerry told me, he told me as soon as that happened, he said, just rewire the whole thing and be done with it. I said, no, man, I found the issue. And he said, okay, well, if that's an issue there, I'm sure it's an issue elsewhere. And guess what? It was. And that's why he's a teacher. So
experience and sometimes poor choices.
yeah, exactly. Man, I don't even remember what the last question I asked you was at this point. Going through my list, and I get off, like I said, I get off on those dog legs. I don't really know what I'm talking about anymore.
Well, I think we were talking about the most complicated issue.
Okay.
Was the last one. But,
All right.
so, and that goes back to the wiring just a little bit. When you're wiring, pay attention to every single detail. And, back to like your setup, the only thing you can control is really the thing that you've done yourself.
Right.
Now we have that done. We know it's a good part. So I'm happy with it. So that was the most complicated thing, but we've covered all of our bases and we're happy with that one.
Right. That's a very good point. So we may have kind of covered this just a second ago, but how do you perceive EFI to be any kind of advantage over just your typical carburetor setup with what we do? Like, I know you said, obviously, you can correct these lean spots throughout the run and things like that, and just overall make your engine live longer. In fact, I know you already said in a previous conversation we had that you use significantly less fuel and you don't even run gas. Running alcohol, you use significantly less fuel. Like eventually over the years, I know this thing, cost quite a bit of money to get all this stuff, but you're definitely going to save your money back. I mean, we're young. I mean, you race this car the rest of your life, you're going to really save your money.
Yes. Well, let's hold off on that question for a moment. That takes a minute to answer, but I think it's worthwhile. So, think about EFI's advantage over a traditional kind of carburetor. Really, I can treat it to run and correct itself. So if the car starts to run a little bit rich or lean based on the targets I established, I can have it correct that. Now, the correction can do a couple of things. It can be a positive and that's running exactly like you want, but it can also be a negative that if I have it adding 2% or 3% more fuel throughout a run, well, now we're adding a change. And a change in a bracket racing setup is not exactly what you want when repeatability is the thing. So we run ours in closed loop where it can't allow for corrections. We just have those corrections kind of minimized where it's only 1 or 2% allowable, but it can still change, can still influence the elapsed time. However, if I want this thing to run like a carburetor and run off the fixed set of parameters at so much fuel at whatever RPM and stay at that, well, I can set it to open loop, and it's only going to run based on the fueling that I specified, and it's going to run pretty well like a carburetor. At this RPM, here's this fuel. It doesn't care what the temperature is, what the change is. It doesn't care what the humidity did. If you want it to run like that, you can. It's a couple clicks of the mouse. We're set like that, or we can set it up to run closed loop and correct. So really, we have the ability to do both. So to me, that's a major advantage. And I have to say, being new to it, most of our experience this season, we have one season on the car with the EFI. So I'll say again, I'm the new guy. So we're the new guy. We're just talking about kind of the basics of the system. But we did this season in mostly closed loop. Next year, we're going to mess with some open loop stuff. So if you're looking for someone who doesn't know what they're doing next season, I might be your guy. We're learning on that one as well. So really, there's an advantage again to me is the flexibility. But so you touched on something about fuel consumption. So we'll come back to that. So when we set this up, it was kind of an interesting and unexpected occurrence that everybody who's run an alcohol car or a rich gas car, they've all had the experience, sitting under the tower in the water box to where you finish the burnout, you just want the doors open and you just want as much air in there because your eyes are burning and it's a nightmare. We've all been there. I just want to go back to the pits and just cry.
My dad's Camaro was the worst about
yes.
that.
Yeah. So it was awful. I remember it, but my first pass in the car, I thought there was something wrong. Because I pull up, the door's closed. I got my helmet on, the car's idling, getting a little bit of temperature going, and I'm thinking, what's wrong with me or what's wrong with the car? I don't have this burning in my eyes.
I'm overly tough now.
yeah, maybe I got tougher, maybe I was desensitized, but it doesn't happen anymore. The only time that I get that burn in my eyes is when I'm sitting under the tower and the car next to me or the car in front of me or caddy corner to me, and they're running. I'm getting their fumes, where we have it optimized to where we're running the stoichiometric equivalent. The car's running at the efficient air fuel ratio, to where I'm not getting that. I can do the burnout. I pull up there. I don't get any smell. I go through, especially on the big end of the racetrack, when you get out of it at the end, it's just as bad of an experience, in a carbureted car and alcohol, so it's not there anymore. I don't have that issue at all. So, it's solved that. So it's running how it should. So not only is it more comfortable for me, it helps build heat in the car, so I can drive around a little bit leaner, so I can build heat in that alcohol car. But also, like you mentioned, the fuel consumption. So from Gateway, if those of you watching who've been there, it's a large track. I can go from my pits or from our pit into the staging lanes, do my burnout, start it up and shut it off a couple of times while I'm, getting there in between, make my run and come back. Then I use about a gallon per pass for the whole thing. That's it. So we used to be about 3.5 gallons or so, but yeah, I can hot lap the thing and do pretty good. It's very temperature stable. It's a methanol characteristic anyway, but we're also using very, very little of it. So right. I bring 10 gallons to the track, and that's enough to cover us very comfortably and not worry about running out.
Yeah.
So kind of neat. There's a couple advantages there I was not expecting at all, and it's just a comfortable car.
I bring about 25 whenever I go to 2-day races, and then if I do any good, I'll usually use about probably 2.5 to 3 of them. And then I'll be waking up, drinking coffee at about 5 in the morning, pumping jugs full again to bring them back in case I decide to win the next day ever. Because you go to the track, that's $6 a gallon, son. I'm not paying that.
That's right. That's right.
But no, that kind of brings me to a side note on the previous question. Well, my side note of my side note, but
never happens.
So yeah, so in my car, I have a lean out valve in my car. So if I need to build heat the last minute, then I can. Obviously it sucks air from the intake through a ball valve, something like that. Just extra air without adding any throttle, so it's not going to cool itself down. So can you do that with EFI? Would you have to have a separate button for that? Like how would you do that, I guess? Like say you're 2 cars back and you're like, man, I'm at 130 degrees or whatever, 140 degrees, and I want to get it to 160 before I'm going to do a burnout. Could you do that last minute with what you're doing, or do you do that, I guess I should ask?
So I don't. I spend a lot of time idling, just holding it up a little bit, getting a little bit of temperature into it. If you want to do that in the Holley system, you could create called an advanced table that would take your base fuel, and you could have it richen it up or lean it out, whatever you could imagine. You could do it. So my dash, it's a touchscreen dash. So I could assign a switch on there that when I turn the switch on, it enables a table that leans it out a little bit or a lot. It's whatever amount you could imagine. Flip the switch, have it be active for 30 seconds and turn it off. or you could have it be a manually enabled and disabled, or both. So if you can imagine it with that system, you could certainly do it.
And
So
everybody,
you're only limited really by your imagination in that respect.
right, and everybody can kind of say all they want, because I know the first thing people are going to think is, oh, well, I'm going to push a button on it, I'm going to forget to turn it off. Well, guess what? I can just as easily forget to shut that ball valve too, if you're going to think of it in that aspect.
Yes.
In fact, I go up there. Once I open the ball valve, my hand doesn't come off of it until I shut it back. But like you said, if you did it electronically and you said you put on a timer for 30 seconds, say, or whatever, if you're really worried about that, then your system is better than mine, because you can't forget. It doesn't matter if you did or not.
Well, here's the other thing you could do too. You can have these inputs and outputs enabled in a variety of ways that, if I still forgot, it's still timing down, I want to disable it beforehand, I could set up to disable it. The throttle position sensor is over 10%. So I'd start my burnout, disables it. It's back to normal table. So
Yeah,
anything you want.
That's a really good point.
I have my fuel pump is a variable duty fuel pump. When I'm just driving around the pits, anything below 25% throttle, it runs at reduced capacity. So I'm not wearing out my fuel pump, to where then when I go down on the two-step or start my burnout, it kicks the output of the fuel pump up, and now we're saving life on our fuel system. We're keeping a fuel cooler, all that. So you can tie various things into your system like that.
Huh. So, based on one of the things that you said earlier, see, I kind of had it reversed. I think most people would. So we've already kind of talked about, do you run an open or closed loop? I guess, can you just explain what the difference is between an open and closed loop? Because I thought that an open loop would mean that it would be open as in auto adjusting, but it's not.
An open loop is just running on the parameters you have set. So I have X amount of fuel, I have X amount of ignition at a certain RPM and a certain manifold pressure. Closed loop, we got oxygen sensors are measuring their fuel ratio, and they're constantly sending a signal back to the ECU saying, hey, you need more, you need less, let's correct it a little bit. So closed loop is allowing for correction based on primarily oxygen sensors, or you could have it be on some other feature, whether it be exhaust gas temperature or something like that. So yeah, it's a little bit weird. Or I could make the admission that maybe I need to double check my definitions, and maybe I'm telling you that backwards. So I'll be the first one to tell you I screw it up too. So it's true.
Well, yeah. So basically, as far as what we're talking about right now, then closed loop would basically mean the engine is operating off of what the engine thinks it's doing, because it's operating off of what just happened, right?
Yes, it's seeing what the engine's producing and comparing it to what it should be doing, and it's correcting for it.
I gotcha. So in general, like as a whole, what kind of advantage would you say, if any, other than the strictly mechanical aspect, as in like engine longevity and things like that, how would you see EFI as having an advantage over a carburetor in bracket racing?
So if you have your engine set up is doing exactly what it should, where now you have an efficient system, so you're not, in my mind, worrying about outside factors, like way rich at this system or at this temperature, this humidity, or it's way lean, so we can account for all of that. We can get it dialed in, then we can switch it back to an open loop if I'm using that correctly. And then treat the thing like a carburetor if we so choose. I mean, to me, it's just we have the ability to make that engine do whatever we want to match whatever the environment is, I guess, is a good way to say it. So to me, it's just we have the 100% tunability of every variable. So I'm always, not leaning the engine out. It's always in a safe setup, if that makes sense.
Right. I got you. So so it would be a scenario if let me just give you a scenario, I guess. So let's say you're like a class racer or something, and let's just say you race at Gateway, and let's just say you're running super gas. So you race at Gateway, you're 990 there. Do you think EFI would make it easier in any way to go to, say, Las Vegas and run super gas there and run your number?
So that require quite a bit less fuel. So when you take our setup, or you take a carbureted setup, go from Gateway, that's the kind of in the armpit of America in terms of the air quality, and you go to Vegas. Now you have a hot, dry air. That's a different environment. In a carburetor, might take a jet change, might change the accelerator pump, might be looking at a bunch of different things there. Well, if I take our setup, we make a run, we might open up the correction tables a little bit and allow it to, as it's making a run, add more fuel. Now I can look at my data logs and see throughout the entire duration of the run, what did it need more of, what did it need more fuel, where I make the correction, and I'm pretty well done. Now, is that going to have an ET impact? Yeah, you may need to adjust your throttle stop. That's a secondary thing from what we're doing. But you may need to adjust your throttle stop. But again, it's something that now we have a completely tunable, safe setup that I generally don't have to worry about at whatever track I'm going to.
Okay, I got you. So I guess the last question that I really have on EFI would be, I think this will apply to almost everybody. I think everybody's concerned with EFI more than anything is it's perceived to be very expensive, but without I guess necessarily saying like exactly what you paid for everything, because that's nobody's business but your own. Could you give a general idea of like what costs are involved with switching to EFI, and like are there some options you chose and some routes you chose that made yours more expensive than others, or vice versa, things like that? Like, is this something, I guess, that the average guy could switch to and not necessarily spend, not saying you have, but I'm just saying in general, like the perception, at least out here where I'm at, is like it's going to be like $15,000 to switch to EFI. Is that true in any way?
So it totally depends on where you want to go with the system. You can buy, staying in the Holley ecosystem, I guess. You could buy, a Sniper EFI setup that goes right on top. It looks like 4150. You could get it set up to, I don't know, you got to look like an old Rochester. Whatever they have it set to where take off the carburetor, bolt on this one, put a new fuel cell in there, a new fuel pump in there, and a filter, and you're pretty well ready to go. Maybe put an oxygen sensor on it. You could go that route. That's about $1,200. You're limited to lower horsepower stuff, 500 horsepower, maybe a little bit more max. You could go that route. You could go, in some cases, some blown cars. I've seen they've actually run 2 of those Snipers. Then it goes into another little bit different setup. Holley has a Terminator, which is a little bit more complex. You could spend a couple grand on that one. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to exaggerate. Our system was expensive because I want all of the data all of the time. So that's what I'm going for. But our system, let's throw some numbers out here. And this is not to be off-putting to anybody thinking about, but our Dominator ECU, it's named ECU, it's $1,800. My dash, about $700. I have about $800 in coil packs. I have probably $600 in a throttle body. I have about $500 in injectors. In my fuel system, I have probably another in fuel pump, filters, whatnot. A couple grand in that. To where it's one of those things you start saying that it adds up and builds. I'd say 10 grand and over is a pretty easy assessment for our setup, but you do not need to go that far into it. We went that route because we have 82 inputs we can have, and we can data log. We have like 60 outputs we can create. So our system, our only limit is what we can imagine and what we can throw at it. The other ones you don't have as much, but you still have the data logging to where you can still see your RPM, you can see your fuel usage, you can see your ignition, you can see all of that. But if you were to spend, $2,000, $3,000, you could be in a pretty solid setup, I believe, for most guys bracket racing. A gas car run 650s, I think you could do that pretty easily.
Okay.
So the expense varies significantly, but don't let that be an off-putting thing. If anybody's curious about it, I'm not a pro by any means, but if anybody's curious about, setup, I'd be more than happy to, tell you everything I know, or at least point you in the direction of someone who knows a heck of a lot more than I do.
Yeah, man. That pretty much wraps us up on the EFI, I would say, portion of this conversation. Definitely everybody, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Going Bracket Racing YouTube channel, and drop your comments down below if you have any questions for Jerry, and we'll make sure that he gets them. And I know he's super interested in this kind of stuff, and he'd be very interested to hear from you guys.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Thanks, Jerry, for coming on the show for sure there. And I know we had a little bit of feedback between you and I. I think I understand why. And we'll have to have that prepared for what I think is going to be a follow-up video, if you're up for it, Jerry, to where we can get into data logging a little bit more, because
Perfect.
I'm going to be honest with you, man. I am more of a data type of person myself. I'm very curious to know what data logging system should I get off into, and give me as much information as I can get. Of course, my budget isn't going to be extensive, but I'm sure we can get off into that. I'm sure a lot of people are listening to that as well. As pretty sure we just opened up a pretty good can of worms there. So as Casey said, don't forget, guys, hit that like and subscribe if you're not tired of us yet. And we will definitely, you'll be notified whenever we come out with more content. For now, though, thanks for tuning in to the Going Bracket Racing YouTube channel. Certainly thanks again, Jerry. Casey?
George,
yeah.
I gotta say 2 other things. Do you have a minute? Are we on a time crunch?
No, we're okay. I want to hear this.
Okay. I know we're on the outro, but I gotta do 2 things. One, last comment on EFI. So when people hear about EFI in the pits, people think they're always working on stuff. You gotta go back, you gotta hop on laptop, you gotta dial in, you gotta change stuff, blah, 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 right? Well, I've told Casey a number of times, when we go back to the pits, it's probably been maybe the very first race, first couple of races, we took the hood off. I take the trunk lid off, I put fuel in it. When we're at the racetrack, it's already dialed in. We go drive the car. The only thing I do with laptop is get data. So don't let that be something that people put into your head, that EFI is very labor intensive. I don't work on my stuff at the track. I go home if I got a problem.
You're not saying everything you see on Street Outlaws might not be true, are you?
I am alluding to the media. Television may not entirely reflect real life. Now, that is the first thing. But, George, do you have a practice tree behind you?
Yeah, it's back there.
So, are you gonna make some hits?
I mean, I can make a couple.
So, I gotta tell you though. So, I told you I didn't bring my practice tree. I was kind of worried about doing it online. Man, I lied.
He's got it.
I can't expect you to make some hits and not do the same. I got to show you guys why I'm a gimme at the race.
A gimme, huh?
Yeah, we're gonna make 5 hits. I'm gonna tell you how bad I am here.
Well, let me load mine up too, and let's see if we can get some hits. I haven't hit this thing all day, Jerry. So you caught me on a cold day.
Same here, and I'm coming off drinking too much caffeine and sugar all day, so this was gonna be a train wreck. So let's see what we can do here.
All right, shot for shot then, huh?
I think you're gonna have a good shot. I'm gonna set this up maybe to where you can see it. I'm gonna put this on one of our machine tools here.
Hey, go for it.
So be right back. Hold just a second.
Yeah, Casey, we're gonna have to get you some maybe another set of plugs for the old practice tree. That way you can just pull the box upstairs. You know.
I know, man. I feel left out. I feel like I'm just the what are they? What's the guy? Remember the referee that used to be in WWF? He's like, let's get it on.
Let's go. Ding.
All right, guys, this is going to be interesting. You know what? We're going handheld with this guy.
Yeah. All right.
We're going handheld here.
Going handheld.
Here we go. We're coming in. So, can we see it?
Yeah, you got to go up just a little. It's going to have a glare. Yeah, there's the glare gone now.
All right. I usually got a two-hand hold when I do this, so we're going to see what happens here. All right. So, can we see it? This is going bad already quick.
Right there's decent. There's a little glare.
Oh, that was way red. Look at that. I'm trying to hold it and do it. Oh, my gosh. We're forgetting about that one.
Oh, he's doing it one hand. You don't got to do that. I trust you.
Oh, no. No. Oh, that was 3.
Up 3 thou red.
Oh,
3 thou red
again.
Add that 3 in.
Oh, no.
It's like I can use my finger.
Oh, man.
1 thou red.
Bet you wish you listened to me now.
He's on it. That would have been perfect.
Oop, that was way green. That
Not way. All right, well.
So we'll do that. We'll call that one flinch. And the rest of them, we're needing to add some in the box. That was our first time run before we added some in.
All right, you got me nervous a little bit, so I'm adding 3. That number that you should have added, those 3, I'll put them in my box since you didn't want to put them in yours. And let's see here.
I'll show you my consistency. I'll go with that.
5 hits. Hey, perfect. I was 16 first hit.
There you go.
All right.
It's all right. The opponent went red.
I think I'm 4. All right, I'm 2 red. Dang it.
Oh.
There's the red light. 4.
Oh, there you go.
Nah, hold on. It's coming down still. Oh, it's perfect. I was just trying to call it ahead of time. That was perfect there. Let's see. A little late. I should have bumped it once. Maybe like 10. No, 15.
Oh, man. Good.
I got one more. I'm going perfect. No, it's like 6. 16. I missed them. There's my spread. It was a little over the place today. I should have left those 3 at home. Should have kept them out of the box.
That's okay. You got me beat. I had a lot of red lights there, but
yeah, man. So yeah, we can do that every time. We're gonna get Casey set up. We're gonna get him another set of cables there and pull that box off that car and get it upstairs. You know.
That's right. Maybe Santa Claus will mail him a Christmas tree.
Well, I heard that.
Santa Claus usually gives me a lump of coal.
I believe it.
Well, on behalf of Going Bracket Racing, guys, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Again, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button and leave some comments below if you've got questions. Hey, we'll get them to Jerry and get them answered for you if we can. If you got any ideas that you'd like to leave down there, certainly do the same. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time.
Thanks for having me, guys.